Can Tunisia's opposition unite to fight Caius? Maybe, but things don't look very bright. When I was there in January, I interviewed a lot of different components of the opposition, including Tunisia's storied labor union, the most powerful labor union in the entire MENA region, which midwifed Tunisia's independence from France all the way back in the 1950s, the UGTT. Talked to them, the Tunisian League of Human Rights, the Bar Association. These are some of the legacy civil society organizations that were Nobel Prize laureates in 2015 for their work in steering the country out of that crisis, the Bardo crisis that I had mentioned earlier. Spoke to them, spoke to different political parties in Tunisia across the ideological spectrum, from hardcore leftists who can't stomach Ennahda to Ennahda, to people in Karama, to Ennahda's right. I think the opposition falls into three camps right now. The first camp is led by a group called Citizens Against the Coup. It's a cross-ideological group that is trying to revive the cross-ideological opposition coalition organizing that we saw in the 2005-2006 October movement in Tunisia, where a lot of leftists and secularists, I shouldn't say a lot, but a small number of prominent, important, brave leftists and secularists banded together with so-called Islamists and Ennahda to go on hunger strike against Ben Ali's regime, timed to coincide with an important UN meeting in Tunisia. And then they formed statements together, etc. Now, they were shouted down, some of the people who signed onto those statements in 05-06, they were shouted down by more purist secularists, if we can use that word to describe them, because they didn't want to have any kind of dialogue with Ennahda whatsoever. They thought it was wrong to even sit down and talk to Ennahda. Now, today, Citizens Against the Coup in the opposition, they're working to revive that spirit of cross-ideological dialogue, because they say, look, listen, we have a long history in Tunisia of dictators trying to divide and rule us. We can't fall into this trap again and again, where if we don't talk to Ennahda, which is the party in Tunisia that has the most mobilizational ballast that can bring people onto the street, we're not going to get very far at all. So, by design, they don't have any leaders in their executive committee who are from Ennahda, because Ennahda has what I wryly call a kind of reverse Midas touch, where everything it has doesn't turn to gold, but turns to something else. And parties and players in civil society, they don't want to work with Ennahda because they don't want to be tarred by its reverse Midas touch. But Citizens Against the Coup, they've tried not to put anybody from Ennahda, and they haven't, in their executive leadership, but they're still working with Ennahda. And this is the reason that brings me to why category number 2 of Tunisia's percolating anti-Caius, anti-coup opposition doesn't want to work with category number 1. Category number 2 are what I call the both ands in that Dawn piece. They are both strongly opposed to what they now call Kais Said's inqilab, Kais Said's presidential coup. But they're also opposed to the parliamentary dysfunction, which they largely blame on Ennahda, that came before. So they both want to oppose Caius, but also not work together with Ennahda. And they oppose Citizens Against the Coup, or at least they don't want to work with it obviously, overtly, because they say the leftists and secularists and Citizens Against the Coup, including leftists who were tortured under Bourguiba for years, under the old regimes for years. So they, these are people who often understand what that was like, because they're simply working together with them. Some of them are concerned about their political futures. If we can manage to steer ourselves into a post-coup Tunisia, they're afraid that tarring by working with Ennahda is going to cost them votes or support, or etc. Some of them have personal reasons. They're deeply opposed to Ennahda. They truly, genuinely believe that it could have reformed the security sector, that it could have tackled corruption, but that it simply chose not to. Again, I think Nida Tunis gets off the hook a lot in that particular line of analysis. The third category, category number 3, is the category I'd say they're the waiting by the phoners. They're the folks who are kind of waiting for the proverbial presidential ping that might come from Caius but has not yet come. And into this category, regretfully, I have to put Tunisia's Nobel Prize laureate legacy civil society organizations, the ones that are actually the strongest. most importantly, Tunisia's labor union, UGTT, which is the one organization in the whole country that probably has make or break power for Kais Saied. If they turned against him, they might be able to really sink his whole dictatorial consolidation project. But if they go with them, they can help him consolidate it. Their problem, in this category 3 problem with Kais Saied, is not the what of what he's done, the making a coup. It's the how of how he's done it. The fact that he hasn't been inclusive, that he hasn't reached out to dialogue with pretty much anybody, including them, and most of them were supportive of him in the beginning. The group in here to really watch in this category 3 is UGTT. They could have make or break potential for Kais, and they just had their own Congress last month in February. So it's really coming full circle, and the circle of repression is really expanding. So mobilizing people is harder than ever. It asks a lot of people, especially people who already gave up so much and experienced so much violence and so much trauma under the former regimes. It asks a hell of a lot of them to mobilize again. So it's a very difficult situation. UGTT could put its finger on the dial, but they've shown it's shown no signs that it will yet.